On this with the ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe. Pule, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I know you had to rush here at short notice. I hope you didn't get any tickets. But let's then talk about, the reflections, because when we read the statement, there's quite a lot that you've spoken about, and we'll get into a lot of that in just a moment. But what has been in the, public domain has been the issue of the step aside resolution, and I see that the NEC has reflected on that.
Evening to your viewers. Of course, the National Executive Committee met in a special session from Sunday the 24th up until yesterday, Monday the 25th of April. One, to deal with process discussion documents going into the policy conference, which we're expected to have now in July. But also, as part of that, deal with some of the issues in the environment, including the very matter you are now raising, the issue of step aside, which we have been engaged with for quite some time. We have had two conferences. Specifically, we've got many others. I'm relating to the two because that's where this notion of stepping aside really comes in. One in Mpumalanga, and the other one in eThekwini. And post those conferences, we have been engaging with yourselves in the media on the clear position of the African National Congress on how it goes about implementing the step-aside resolution. We were mandated by the 54th National Conference to implement this as part of the restoration of the credibility, integrity, and standing of the African National Congress. After the conclusion of both the Mpumalanga Provincial Conference as well as the eThekwini Conference, where our comrades who have been indicted to appear in a court of law were nominated and subsequently accepted such nomination and ultimately elected into those positions. And well, of course, they couldn't really take over. It meant that immediately after being elected, they had to now step aside as per that resolution. We realized that this created an anomaly. The National Working Committee, because the document of the guidelines is really a living document, which means that from time to time the NEC would have to then reflect on how it goes about implementing that kind of a resolution. We then came to a conclusion that one, in keeping with the prescripts of through the eye of the needle, which begins to impose on what is expected of us as leaders of the African National Congress, that we have got to be exemplary, that our actions have got to be seen inspiring society. That also in the pronouncement of our own positions on how we want to restore the credibility of our ANC, we've got to make sure that we do not leave society confused. It was on the basis of this that the National Executive Committee, having reflected up until almost midnight last night, arrived at a conclusion that those of our cadres that have stepped aside from their positions owing to them being indicted to appear in court of law or charged with other serious crimes must not be allowed to stand during that period that they have stepped aside. Similarly, we've also agreed that cadres that would have been suspended in accordance with 25.70 of the ANC Constitution should also not be allowed to stand. We said we need to do this so that society out there understand how the ANC pronounces itself on some of these key decisions. But we also went further before you come in, Bongi. We said that our national officials must be seized with this matter. They are welcomed to make proposals to the National Executive Committee from time to time. We want to make sure that when we go to that seminal occasion of the 55th National Conference of the African National Congress, including on how we present our report on organizational renewal, including the work that we shall have done, we need to then say to our members, we are handing this organization to all of you in good shape, having implemented what was your instructions to this leadership when we took over in 2017.
So, Pule, what does that then mean for those that have already been elected and have stepped aside?
Well, of course, because they would have now advised the organization that they will be stepping aside from those positions, meaning that they will remain elected but in abeyance, meaning they would not be able to attend meetings of the regional or provincial executive committee, depending on which structure they serve. That alone presents a difficulty. Yes, Bongiwe is appointed to work at the SABC as a news anchor, but because of pending HR issues, Bongiwe is unable to report for work. It means the SABC, for as long as Bongiwe can't perform that work, is then left with a void. that really compromises what SABC was trying to do in bringing Bongiwe in that position. the ANC faces that kind of a difficult situation. Now, we said that officials, in processing all of these decisions taken, officials of the African National Congress have got to make sure that there is at least some level of conformity to decisions taken by this National Executive Committee. And they will report to us from time to time if there are challenges that they are picking up. We trust that they will be able to provide the required leadership.
Can you appreciate, though, what a difficult position this is going to put you in? Because in the other previous ones, we've seen in, eThekwini, we've seen in Mpumalanga as well, where this has been an issue that then came to the fore. Can you appreciate how difficult it's going to be to do that with regards to the other conferences that are upcoming? Because others will say, but we saw this happen, so can't we then do this?
Well, because the document that really articulates the step-aside resolution, including outlining the broad framework through which it has got to be carried forward. We had said, the Treasurer General of the ANC, Comrade Pule Mabe, who led that process, did indicate, even at the time when we're rolling it out to the public, that this remains a living document, meaning that from time to time you'll have to make reflections. You see, there is an English saying that experience is the best teacher. So out of the experiences that we gather as an organization, we are then able to say the trajectory or path we are taking in the execution of resolutions coming out of conferences. What are the challenges that we are picking up? What is it that we need to do better to make sure that the application of all of these rules is consistent across organizations? So there's not going to be a challenge. The National Executive Committee of the ANC is the highest decision-making body in between conferences. When this conference is set, just to amplify my point, when this conference is set, there would not have been an NEC, and I've clarified many of your colleagues in the media that decisions of the ANC are not made there on the streets. We are a self-respecting organization. So now, there are developments that happened before the NEC could sit. When the NEC sits to reflect, it has got to also focus its attention on issues in the environment impacted upon by its own policies, and then say, we think that to avoid ambiguity, this is the line that the organization should be taking.
And Pule, we don't have a lot of time, but I know you saw the reports at the weekend
yes.
where the Sunday Times was also talking about that part of the leaked document that you were going into the NEC meeting, to discuss. So I just borrow from that particular article. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this one. It quotes Professor Ruth Hall on the land issue, saying that there's nothing wrong with land donations in principle, but relying on the goodwill of landowners would not address the urgent demand for access to land for livelihoods, homes, farming, and also saying that she's describing the land donations idea as akin to privatizing land reform. Your response to that, because we saw that the ANC looks set to, according to reports, set to then asking the farmers, in fact, to donate land to black farmers.
Well, I don't want to go into detail on this specific one, especially on matters that relate to policy discussion documents, because the Treasurer General of the ANC, Comrade Pule Mabe, on behalf of the Secretary General's office, you would know that he had since been asked by the National Executive Committee to perform the overall work of the SGO, owing to the ill health of our DSG, whom we continue to wish well. I must just mention here on record that she did participate in this special NEC and was in good spirits. So the TG will be addressing the media together with chairpersons and presenters of various commissions making up these discussion documents. We had agreed that we perhaps shelve that. There's quite weighty pronouncements and weighty discussions that went into what the ANC reflected on. But I know that it's a matter of interest, but it would help to at least allow that space, get our cadres who are tasked to deal with those specific committees, those who are chairing the relevant subcommittees, to then make reflection, including on the work that we've already done in Parliament, where we wanted to even amend Section 25 and the relevant property clauses in the Constitution, or testing their ability to be able to allow us to alter property relations in the country all of those things will find expression when we talk to members of the media.
It'll be interesting to see, because I mean, talking about that parliamentary process, some have said that you are now abandoning land expropriation, but also you didn't even need the amendment of the constitution. But let's park that there. I'm keen to find out, the processes around the, ANC Women's League President, Batabile. I mean, we know that, there's been now the move to disband the Women's League and also replace it with the National Task Team. Let's talk about this process to present herself to the Integrity Commission. When can we expect this to take place, and how quickly can we expect it to wrap up?
We had engagements on this matter with yourselves in the media previously, and had indicated at the time that the National Working Committee had tasked our Treasurer General to have engagements with her, and following a discussion with the officials, a process was outlined on what needed to happen. Now, as they were working on meeting, there was the conviction with an option of a fine. And they then arrived at a conclusion that perhaps where the matter is at now, it's one that could be best ventilated through the Integrity Commission. So we're expecting that process to happen much sooner. I do not have offhand the diary of the Integrity Commission, but they are aware that we had said, and Comrade Batabile herself had accepted that kind of a move. So we're expecting that it will happen much sooner. It's in the interest of the organization that we don't place these issues in the public for a much longer period, because when they linger in the public for a longer period, they send a message that we are either indecisive or are not acting in accordance with the prescripts of our own resolutions.
And I know your statement talks about interim structures, because I was going to go there, and their participation in regional and provincial conferences, because this was also one of those concerns ahead of that. But I'm out of time. In 10 seconds, tomorrow's Freedom Day, your reflections.
Well, tomorrow's Freedom Day comes at a time when so much has happened and much more still needs to be done. Many of our people still live in squalor, but many others are living in better conditions. They have received houses from our government, have got running water where they live, have got access to electricity and all of that. But the challenge I hate that we all need to resolve is that when we reflect on tomorrow's Freedom Day, we must also say, what is it that we are doing to make this country a better place? The creation of jobs for the youth, guaranteeing them that they will be able to secure a future, making sure that we create an environment where we could be able to deal and cope with the challenges that arise today. Climate change. We need to create a climate resilient economy. It means that looking into the future, we need to make sure that those that come up or those that come in to play that kind of a role are those that appreciate careers that a future we want would require, and demand that we skill our young people to be able to be responsive to that. I mean, the floods in KZN, and we make that reflection in our own statement, that in part is because of climate change, and encourage our people on where they need to actually be constructing their houses. It means that the younger ones coming up today have got to actually make sure that they get the skills that are required and relevant for the future they want. All right,
Pule, I do hope we talk again when the documents are out and we really talk about some of these issues, because when one reads from that leaked portion of them, there is quite a lot to talk about. There's still some questions even around the explorations and all of that, but let's leave it there for now. That is ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe.